Hey there. Imagine yourself crouched in a cramped tenement room in St. Giles, London, 1737. The air presses thick with the clash of juniper and sweat, and the hallway outside is alive with children's shouts and coughing. Your hands tremble as you count the coins from yesterday's sales, barely enough for stale bread. The city beyond your thin walls rumbles with the restless tide of costermongers and apprentices, all caught in gin's grip. Tonight you'll discover the truth about who is watching you from the shadows. And it's not who you expect. If you find yourself drawn into stories like this, only hit like and subscribe if it truly feels right. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know if this is your midnight, your early morning, or something in between. Dim the lights, get comfortable, and let yourself slip into the hush of another world. You press your back against the cold brick, knees tucked to your chest, listening for the scrape of boots on the stairs. Your breath carries the sharp scent of gin and the sour tang of fear. Each coin in your palm feels heavier than it's worth. You remember how, just last week, the baker down the lane accepted a thimbleful of gin instead of coins for a loaf. Desperation is the only currency that never runs out here. The city's hunger seeps through every wall. London in the 1730s is a city divided by gin. You see it in the faces of neighbours, their eyes hollow, their laughter edged with something brittle. You sell what you must to survive, but every sale leaves a mark. The law has changed since the Gin Act passed last year, and now every transaction carries risk. Informers lurk in the fog, trading names for coins. Tonight, the moon is a pale blur behind chimney smoke. You watch its light flicker across the uneven floorboards, never quite reaching the corners. The sound of coughing rises from the next room, a child's rasp echoing your own hunger. You wonder if you'll see morning. Each night you count your blessings and your enemies. You remember the taste of real bread, the kind that didn't crumble in your hands. Now, even the bakers are desperate. Some days you barter gin for a crust, knowing the risk. Badly made gin can blind a man or worse. Still, you pour it with steady hands, hoping your batch is clean enough to keep your customers upright. Your fingers brush the rough weave of your shawl, patched and threadbare. Outside, a cart rumbles over the cobbles, its wheels splashing through puddles. The sound is a reminder that life doesn't pause for your fear. In the alleys, rival sellers whisper about constables and bribes. The informer system has made everyone a potential traitor. You learned early that trust is a luxury. The woman next door, Mary, once shared her bread with you. Now, she barely meets your eye. Word is, she's been seen speaking with a man in a blue coat, a color favored by those who trade secrets for survival. You tuck your coins away, heart pounding. The tenement smells of damp brick and spilled gin. Every surface is sticky, every window clouded. You hear the distant thud of boots on the stairs, and your body tenses. If it's the constable, you'll need to hide the bottles fast. If it's a rival, you'll need to defend your corner. The stakes rise with every footstep. A sudden shout from the alley below snaps your focus. You creep to the window, careful not to be seen. Two men argue over a broken bottle. One swings, wild and desperate, and the other stumbles into the mud. You recognize the loser, He's a regular, always short on coins, but quick to trade news. You file his face away for later. The city's pulse is relentless. Even at this hour, the streets hum with movement. Costermongers push their carts, calling out for buyers. Apprentices slip through the crowds, pockets full of secrets. Children dart between legs, chasing scraps and laughter. You envy their energy, even as you fear for their futures. You check your stash, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The bottles clink softly, each one a risk and a lifeline. You count them twice, fingers numb from cold and nerves. The gin act means every bottle is contraband, every sale a gamble. You wonder how long you can keep running. A new sound rises, a woman's voice, sharp with warning. You freeze, heart racing. The voice belongs to Mary, and she's shouting at someone to leave her door. You hear the scuffle, the crash of something heavy. The informer system has turned neighbors into enemies. You grip the edge of your cot, waiting for the next blow. The air thickens with tension. You imagine the constable's face, stern and unyielding. If you're caught, you could be fined, jailed, or worse. The memory of last winter's raids is still fresh. You saw men dragged from their beds, women weeping in the street. Survival means staying invisible. A lull settles, broken only by the distant cry of a baby. You let yourself breathe, just for a moment. The stakes are simple. Your freedom, your life, your chance to start over. You remind yourself that every risk is a step toward hope. The city may be cruel, but you're still here. You slip to the door, listening for movement. The hallway is quiet now, save for the drip of water from a cracked ceiling. You step out, shawl pulled tight, and move toward the stairs. Each board creaks beneath your feet, a warning to anyone listening. You keep your head down, eyes fixed on the floor. Outside, the night air is damp and cold. The scent of juniper lingers, mingling with the stench of refuse and tar. You move quickly, blending into the shadows. Every corner hides a threat or an opportunity. You know the routes that keep you out of sight. A carriage rattles past, its lamps casting long shadows. Inside, you glimpse silks and powdered wigs, wealth moving through the city untouched by want. The contrast stings. You wonder what it would be like to live on the other side of the glass. For now, you settle for watching, unseen. You duck into a narrow alley, heart pounding. The walls close in, slick with grime. You step over a sleeping figure, careful not to wake him. In this world, sleep is a luxury, and safety is never guaranteed. You clutch your bottle tighter. A sudden movement to your left. A cat darts from the rubbish, eyes gleaming. You exhale, tension easing. The city is alive with things that scurry and hide. You are one of them, for now. London, 7:38. Rain drumming on the stones as you duck through a narrow passage, your breath sharp and quick in the cold air. Your skirt is already damp, the hem heavy with muddy water, but you keep moving, fingers tight around the bottle hidden beneath your threadbare shawl. The alley stinks of rotting cabbage and spilled gin, and every step echoes off the brick, drawing eyes from darkened doorways. You pass a boy with a basket of eels, his gaze darting to your hands, then away. The city is awake and hungry, and you are just another shadow slipping through its veins. You reach Mrs. Hodges' gin shop, the door warped and swollen from years of steam and spilled spirits. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of juniper and sweat, bodies pressed close around a battered table. The barkeeper's eyes flick to you, and you nod, sliding your coin across the scarred wood. No words pass between you. The exchange is a silent ritual, as familiar as breathing, as dangerous as a knife fight in the dark. A hush falls as you step further in, the regulars wary of newcomers and the ever-present threat of a raid. You feel the weight of their stares, measuring, calculating. Every person here has something to lose, and every transaction is a wager. The bottle changes hands, the glass cool and slick in your palm. You tuck it away, heart pounding, and glance toward the window where rain blurs the street beyond. Outside, the patrols are closer now. You catch the heavy tread of constables near Covent Garden, their boots striking puddles with practiced menace. Their lanterns swing, casting gold across the wet stones, searching for faces they know and hands that tremble. You press yourself against the wall, counting your breaths, listening for the telltale clatter that means someone has run. If you're caught, it's the stocks at best, the workhouse at worst. Rival sellers linger by the doorway, their eyes sharp as razors. One, a gaunt woman with a scar above her lip, nods at you, her meaning clear. She'll tip off the law for a shilling if it serves her. Trust is a luxury you can't afford. You keep your head down, moving with purpose, never letting your gaze settle too long on any face. The gin trade is a battlefield, and you are both soldier and spoil. The air inside the shop is almost too thick to breathe. A stew of gin, unwashed bodies, and the faint tang of tar from the river. Your hands itch, the bottle heavy against your ribs. You remember the stories, how some sellers stretch their gin with sulfuric acid or lime oil, the flavor sharp and burning. You pray Mrs. Hodge is honest, but honesty is rare in these streets. A child darts past your knees, clutching a crust of bread, chased by another with a bruised apple. The noise rises and falls, a tide of laughter, coughing, and the scrape of chairs. You see costermongers haggling over bruised fruit, apprentices with ink-stained fingers, all drawn to the promise of cheap oblivion. For a penny, you can forget the cold, the hunger, the fear, at least for an hour. Suddenly, the door bangs open. Rain and noise spill in, and with them, a man in a constable's coat. The room freezes, every eye fixed on his boots. Your heart stops. You grip the bottle tighter, knuckles white. He scans the room, his gaze lingering on you for a heartbeat too long. You force yourself to breathe, to look away, to act as if you belong. The man sniffs, the scent of gin thick in the air, and moves on. A sigh ripples through the crowd. You know it's not over. He could return at any moment, or worse, send word to his fellows outside. The threat lingers, a blade at your throat. You edge toward the back of the shop, past a group of women laughing too loudly, their cheeks flushed with drink. You selling or buying? She whispers, eyes bright. Her breath is hot with gin, her smile edged with desperation. You shake her off, mutter something about waiting for a friend. She lets you go, but her gaze follows you, hungry and suspicious. You slip through a curtain into a cramped storeroom, shelves lined with cloudy bottles and sacks of barley. The air here is cooler, tinged with mildew and the metallic tang of spilled spirits. You lean against the wall, heart still racing, and listen to the muffled sounds of the shop beyond. Every minute you linger is a risk. But outside, the constables are waiting. It is barely dawn in the narrow street, and you stand in the bakery queue, shoulders hunched against the chill, the rough brick at your back still damp from last night's rain. The city is waking, but the air already carries the sharp tang of gin, threading through the softer scent of rising dough. The baker's door stands open, spilling out warmth and a cloud of flour that clings to your lashes. In your pocket, the small bottle weighs heavier than coin. You press it into the baker's hand, his eyes flickering with a mix of gratitude and fear. You nod, silent. The baker's fingers close fast around the bottle, and he tucks it beneath the counter with practiced speed. The loaf he gives you is small, but you cradle it like treasure. Behind you, the line shifts. A woman, face hollow, cradles a child whose eyes are too old for his years. You recognize her from the alley, where she sometimes trades a thimble of gin for a crust. The bakery queue murmurs with talk, voices low and tight. You hear a man mutter about the price of spirits, another about the constables who patrol the market. Someone says a mother traded her only shawl for a bottle just last night. The child behind you coughs, a thin sound that cuts through the morning. You glance back and catch the mother's gaze, her eyes rimmed with red. The loaf in your hand is still warm. You break off a piece and pass it to the child, who snatches it with shaking fingers. The mother mouths her thanks, but her gaze lingers on your coat pocket. You know she's guessing what you gave the baker. Gin has become the city's second currency, and every transaction is a risk. Your own belly aches, empty except for the burn of gin from last night. It is a common story here. Some mornings, gin is all you have to fill the hollow. The spirit is cheap, bitter, and laced with something sharp. Alum, you suspect, that leaves a metallic taste clinging to your tongue. The baker's bread is safer, if you can get it. A sudden shout cracks the air. Down the lane, two men scuffle, one accusing the other of watering down his gin. The crowd stiffens. You edge closer to the bakery door, heart pounding. The baker glances at you, then at the street, his jaw set. The city feels ready to snap. You step inside the bakery's shadow, letting the door swing shut behind you. The warmth is a balm, but you do not linger. The baker's wife stands by the oven, eyes darting between you and the window. She says nothing, but you sense her worry. Informers are everywhere, and a careless word could see you both dragged to the magistrate's bench. Women like you are always in danger. You know the stories. Neighbors vanished, sentenced to hard labor in the House of Correction for selling gin without a license. The informer system has turned the city into a nest of spies. You trust no one, not even the baker's wife, though she once shared her heel of bread with you. The loaf is stashed in your satchel, wrapped in a rag that smells of juniper and tar. You slip out the back door, boots skidding on the slick cobbles. The alley is close, walls pressing in. You keep your head down as you pass a knot of boys, their hands sticky with spilled spirits. One of them grins, revealing a mouthful of broken teeth. You walk quickly, the city's sounds swelling around you, distant carriage wheels. A cough echoing from a garret window, the clatter of a constable's truncheon on stone. The air is thick with the clashing scents of gin and unwashed bodies. You pull your coat tighter, feeling the roughness of the fabric against your skin. A sudden memory catches you, your mother's hands, soft and warm, pressing a penny into your palm. That was before the gin stalls, before the city's hunger grew so sharp. Now, you trade in secrets and spirits, always watching for the next threat. The stakes are higher than a loaf of bread. You turn onto a wider street, where the gin shops huddle beneath crooked signs. The windows are fogged, but you can make out the shadows of women inside, their laughter brittle. Some wear borrowed finery, lace cuffs over ragged sleeves. You know their faces, and they know yours. A constable stands at the corner, eyes sweeping the crowd. You keep to the shadows, heart thudding. The gin craze has made the law both predator and prey. Some constables drink as much as the rest, but others are hungry for the reward money. Informers slip between the cracks, their whispers buying them a night's safety. You duck into a narrow alley, the smell of damp brick rising up. The walls here drip with condensation, and your boots squelch in the mud. You pass a door with a red mark, someone's warning, or a sign of sickness. You do not linger. The city's dangers shift with every step. The bread in your satchel is already cooling, but you dare not eat it all at once. Hunger is a constant ache, but you have learned to ration what little you have. The gin you barter is poor stuff, cut with turpentine or worse. You have seen what it does to children, their eyes glassy, their hands trembling. You pause beneath a broken lantern, listening. A woman's voice drifts from a window above, singing a lullaby to a child who will likely wake hungry. You press on, boots slipping on moss. The city is always watching, always hungry. A carriage rattles past, its windows curtained. For a moment you glimpse a flash of silk, a jeweled hand. The world of luxury is close, but separated by glass and coin. You wonder if those inside have ever tasted the gin that fills these streets. The divide feels impossible to cross. You take a breath, the air thick with smoke and juniper. Your lungs ache, but you keep moving. Survival means never standing still. You have learned to read faces, to sense when danger is near. Every transaction is a gamble. You duck into a coaching inn, the low ceiling pressing down. The air is warm, thick with the smell of spilled ale and sweat. A fire crackles in the hearth, but the heat barely touches you. You slide onto a bench, eyes scanning the room. A man with a scarred cheek sits at the next table, counting coins with stained fingers. He glances up, meeting your gaze. You look away, focusing on the bread in your lap. The crowd here is rough, but no one asks questions. That is its own kind of safety. You tear off another piece of bread, chewing slowly. The taste is bland, but it fills the emptiness. Around you, voices rise and fall, stories of raids, of friends taken in the night, of fortunes lost at the bottom of a bottle. You listen, ears straining for any mention of your own name. The innkeeper passes by, his apron streaked with flour and grease. He nods at you, then at the scarred man. You sense an unspoken understanding. Everyone here has something to hide. The walls are thick, but secrets slip through the cracks. London, St. Giles, 1737. Night presses in as you stand in your cramped tenement, the air thick with gin and the sour tang of sweat. Molly's eyes linger too long on the loose brick behind your cot, where your stash sits wrapped in old linen. The flickering candlelight throws shadows across her face, making it hard to read her intent. You keep your words clipped and your hands busy, folding rags, but your heart thuds with suspicion. Every neighbor is a potential threat, and tonight Molly feels closer to danger than comfort. Outside, the alley is alive with muffled shouts, the scrape of boots, and the sharp clatter of a distant carriage. You slip your stash deeper into the wall, feeling the rough brick bite your knuckles. The scent of juniper competes with the reek of damp stone and tar, wrapping around you like a second skin. You know the informer system has made trust a fool's game. Everyone's eyes are hungry, and reward money glimmers brighter than any friendship. Survival means keeping secrets close and your face unreadable. A constable's silhouette appears at the mouth of the alley, his coat slick with rain and his eyes cold as slate. He stands beneath the swinging sign of the gin shop, notebook open, lips pursed. You freeze in the shadows, every muscle tight. The informer system has turned neighbors into spies, and you can almost taste the fear in the air. The constable's gaze sweeps over you, lingering just long enough to make your skin crawl. You duck back inside, heart pounding, and press your ear to the door. Molly's voice floats up from the stairwell, low and urgent, but you can't catch the words. The walls are thin, but not thin enough for certainty. You wonder if she's already whispered your name to the law. Each step she takes on the creaking stairs feels like a countdown. You remember last winter, when old Tom disappeared after a neighbor's tip. He'd sold gin cut with turpentine, dangerous stuff, but cheap, and no one cared about the taste so long as it burned. You'd helped Tom once, passing him a crust of bread, but that counted for nothing when the constable came. The memory is a warning. Kindness is a luxury you can't afford. Your hands shake as you pour a measure of gin into a chipped mug. The liquid is cloudy, sharp with the smell of raw alcohol and something bitter underneath. This isn't the fine spirit the gentry sip behind velvet curtains. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the poor, a lifeline and a curse. You swallow hard, feeling it burn all the way down. The tenement's walls press in, damp and close, and you can hear the coughs and moans of your neighbors through the thin plaster. The gin craze has made these rooms a battleground. Every bottle a risk, every sale a wager. You move quietly, careful not to draw attention, but the scent of juniper clings to your clothes. It marks you as surely as a scar. A sudden knock rattles the door. You freeze, mug halfway to your lips. The rhythm is wrong, too steady, too deliberate. Your mind races through your options: hide the stash, feign sleep, or open the door and bluff. The silence stretches, heavy with threat. You choose to wait, breath shallow. A knock comes again, sharper this time. You tuck the mug beneath your cot and slip the linen-wrapped bottles deeper into the wall. The floorboards creak as you cross to the door, every step measured. You press your palm to the wood, feeling the cold seep through. The stakes have never felt higher. If you're caught, it's the workhouse or worse. You crack the door just enough to see Molly's anxious face in the shadows. Her eyes dart past you, searching the room for signs of your trade. She whispers, "Constable's asking about you. Says someone saw bottles." Her words are a lifeline and a noose. You nod, keeping your face blank, and thank her. You wonder if she expects payment for her warning, or if she's already told the law. You close the door softly, pulse racing, and lean against the damp wall. The informer system has made every kindness suspect. You can't tell if Molly's warning is genuine or a trap. Outside, the constable's boots echo on the cobbles, fading into the night. For now, you're safe, but the reprieve feels fragile. London's morning fog presses against the tenement window, and you stand in your cramped room, hands trembling as you pour gin into a brown glass bottle. The air is thick with the sharp tang of juniper and the must of old rags. Your fingers are numb from the cold, but you scrawl medicinal cordial on a torn scrap and tie it to the neck. You hear footsteps in the hall, heavy, deliberate, pausing outside your door. You freeze, heart thudding, but the boots move on, and you let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. You wrap the bottle in a threadbare shawl and slip into the alley, boots splashing through yesterday's rain. The city is waking up, but the market already teems with hawkers and buyers, their voices rough and urgent. The scent of tar and spilled spirits floats above the stalls, mixing with the coughs of children and the barked orders of traders. You keep your head down, weaving through the crowd. Every face could be a friend or an informer. You trust no one. At the edge of the market, you find your spot beside a battered cart piled with onions. You set the bottle at your feet, careful not to draw attention. A woman with hollow cheeks and a faded bonnet approaches, eyes darting. You nod, murmuring, "For the cough, miss, and the chills." She presses a coin into your palm, snatching the bottle and tucking it deep beneath her shawl. The exchange is swift, practiced. You move on before anyone can linger. Each sale is a risk, but you need the coins. Gin sellers like you have learned to wear masks. Sometimes you are a healer, sometimes a criminal, always a survivor. You speak in whispers, never meeting a gaze too long. The market is crawling with informers, men and women paid to betray their neighbors. You catch the eye of a familiar face, a girl you once shared a crust of bread with, but she looks away. Trust is a luxury you cannot afford. Your hands smell of gin and fear. The spirits you sell are harsh, cut with turpentine and lime to stretch the profit. Sometimes you wake at night, haunted by the memory of a boy coughing up blood after a dose too strong. But the city's hunger for gin is endless, and you cannot stop. Every coin you earn is a step away from the workhouse. A sudden commotion ripples down the row of stalls. You stiffen, watching as two constables shoulder through the crowd, blue coats bright against the grime. Their eyes sweep the market, searching for anyone out of place. You tuck your bottles deeper into your basket, heart racing. The constables pause near the fishmonger, questioning a ragged man. You edge away, pulse pounding. You duck into a narrow alley, the walls slick with damp. The stench of rotten spilled gin clings to the bricks. Here, in the shadows, you are invisible. But you know the danger is never far. The informer system has turned neighbor against neighbor, and every whispered deal is another chance for betrayal. You press on, feet aching, determined to make your rounds before the city wakes fully. You slip into a gin shop hidden behind a faded curtain, the room thick with smoke and laughter. Inside, the air is warmer. the scent of juniper and sweat mingling with spilled ale. A man at the counter nods, sliding you a flask in exchange for your own bottle. You count your coins, fingers trembling. The shopkeeper's wife eyes you, suspicion in her gaze. You force a smile, grateful for the brief shelter. The gin here is barely drinkable, but it sells. In these back rooms you see the cost of the craze. Faces gaunt, eyes glassy, hands shaking as they clutch their bottles. You remember when gin was a luxury, sipped by the wealthy in silver cups. Now, it is the drink of the desperate. You are both seller and witness to the city's slow unraveling. You step back into the street, the cold biting through your shawl. The sound of carriage wheels rattles over cobblestones, mingling with the cries of children and the distant clang of church bells. You keep moving, always alert. The city is a maze of danger and opportunity, and you have learned to read its signs. A boy approaches, eyes wide, holding out a copper. You hesitate, scanning the street for constables. The boy's mother stands nearby, her face drawn and hopeful. You pass him a bottle, wrapped tight in paper. He scurries away, and you feel the weight of his trust settle on your shoulders. Every sale is a gamble, but it's the only way forward. The market's energy shifts as a new vendor arrives, her basket overflowing with fresh bread. You watch her, envy and admiration mingling in your chest. She smiles at you, and for a moment, you remember what it is to feel safe. But safety is fleeting here. You tuck your coins into your bodice, eyes scanning for threats. A sudden shout cuts through the bustle. A man stumbles, clutching his chest, collapsing in the mud. The crowd surges, some rushing to help, others turning away. You recognize the signs. Too much gin, too little hope. The constables push through, shouting for order. You slip away, heart pounding. The memory burned into your mind. You find a quiet corner behind a stack of crates, lungs burning from the run. The world narrows to the sound of your breath and the rough wood beneath your fingers. In this moment, you are neither healer nor criminal, just a woman trying to survive. You let yourself rest, if only for a heartbeat. The stakes press in again. If you are caught, you face prison or worse. If you stop, you starve. You remember the stories of women hauled before the magistrate, their names dragged through the mud. Every choice is a risk, every mask another layer of protection. You steel yourself and stand. You move on to the next alley, where the light is thin and the air reeks of smoke. Here, the buyers are bolder, their desperation sharper. You sell quickly, never lingering. The coins you collect are warm in your palm, a small comfort against the cold. You know the profit you make is built on the city's suffering. A carriage rattles past, its windows curtained, the horse's hooves muffled by straw. You glimpse a flash of silk, a woman's laughter, wealth hidden behind glass. The contrast stings. You wonder what it would be to live without fear, to drink for pleasure instead of escape. But the thought fades as quickly as it came. Medicinal cordial. London, 1737. The gin shop is packed with bodies and sweat, and you're wedged between a crate of empty bottles and Mrs. Hodges' hunched back. The morning's cold still clings to your skin, but inside it's all heat, gin vapor, and the greasy tang of frying suet. You hear the shout, sharp, guttural, before you see the blue coats. Constables burst in, boots thudding, knocking over a barrel that spills sour gin across the flagstones. You duck behind a stack of crates, heart pounding, clutching a flask you'd hidden in your apron folds. The air stings with juniper and lime oil, a sharpness that cuts through the stink of unwashed bodies. Mrs. Hodge meets your eyes, her nod barely a flicker. This is not her first raid, and it won't be yours either. You press a penny into a constable's palm, your hand shaking only a little. His fingers close around it, eyes flicking sideways. He's weighing the risk. Bribery is as common as gin here. Everyone knows the price of a blind eye, though the rate keeps rising with each new law. The constable's grip tightens, and you hold your breath. He jerks his chin toward the back, and you don't wait for a second signal. The back door yawns open, the alley beyond slick with rain, and the promise of escape. You run, feet slipping on stones, flask pressed hard to your ribs. You burst into the alley, lungs burning, the noise of the raid muffled by the close, damp walls. The air outside is thick with tar and the rot of old cabbage, but it's freedom for now. Behind you, barrels crash and someone screams. You keep moving, boots splashing through puddles, the flask heavy in your hand. Every step is a lesson in risk. Trust the wrong face or hesitate, and you'll end up in stocks. You duck beneath a sagging clothesline, skirts catching on a nail, and keep going. You slip into a narrow passage between buildings, the bricks slick with moss and London grime. The city is a maze, and you know its shortcuts better than most. You pass a beggar curled beneath a broken cart, his eyes glazed from last night's gin. He barely stirs as you step over him. The sound of carriage wheels grows louder, then fades. You press your back to the wall, breath coming in shallow bursts. The flask is safe for now. You remember the first time you tasted gin, your mother's hands, rough and trembling, pouring a measure into a cracked mug. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she'd said, and you'd believed her because the hunger was worse than the burn. The memory is a weight you carry, heavier than the flask. The city feeds on people like you, and you've learned to take what you can, when you can. You move again, the alley narrowing until you're forced to squeeze sideways, brick scraping your shoulder. The scent of lime oil clings to your skin, a cheap trick to mask the bitterness. You emerge near Covent Garden, the market already bustling with hawkers and buyers. Constables and informers prowl here, eyes sharp for anyone selling gin without a license. You keep your head down, blending into the crowd. A woman shouts about fresh oysters, her voice hoarse from years of gin and cold mornings. You spot Mrs. Hodge slipping through the throng, her basket empty, her pace quick. You follow, careful not to draw attention. You duck inside a coaching inn, the door slamming behind you. The air is thick with pipe smoke and spilled ale, but it's safer than the street. You find a corner near the fire, hands still trembling. The innkeeper eyes you, but you nod and slide a penny across the table. He shrugs, turning back to his ledgers. You watch the door, every muscle tense. You know the risks better than most. The gin trade is a battlefield. Rival sellers, informers, constables, all hungry for coin or revenge. You've seen women dragged from their beds at dawn, wrists bound, children crying in the street. You've seen men beaten for refusing to pay bribes. The rules change with every new act of Parliament, but the hunger never does. You catch sight of a familiar face, a young man with a crooked nose and quick hands. He flashes you a grin, slipping a folded note beneath your tankard. You wait until he's gone before reading it. The words are simple tonight. Back alley behind the pie shop. Bring what you have. You fold the note and tuck it into your bodice. London, 1737, and you are pressed into the crowd near the courthouse, the air choked with the scent of sweat and juniper. The cobbles are slick beneath your shoes, and your pulse hammers as two women, Mary and Bess, faces you know from the gin shop, are yanked forward by a constable. Mary's glare is sharp as glass. Bess is hollow-eyed, her lips trembling. The rope binding their wrists bites red into skin. A warning for every woman watching. You feel the eyes of the crowd on you, searching for sympathy or betrayal. A sharp cry breaks from Bess as she stumbles, her skirts dragging in the muck. The constable's grip tightens, indifferent to her pain. You remember the stories. Women vanish into the house of correction, emerging months later with hunched backs and haunted stares. The threat is real. A single misstep, a careless word, and you could be next. The crowd shifts, pressing you closer to the edge of the alley. You taste bile, the memory of last night's gin burning in your throat. Your hands clench around the coin hidden in your apron. It is barely enough for bread, let alone the bribe you owe. The constable's gaze sweeps the crowd, lingering on your face. You lower your eyes, heart thudding. Mary spits at the ground, defiant, even as she is dragged away. You wonder if you would have her courage, or if fear would break you like Bess. Every deal you make is a risk. The gin you sell is cloudy, laced with lime oil to mask the harshness, and sometimes a drop of sulfuric acid to keep it clear and biting. The smell clings to your skin, a secret you cannot wash away. You know the dangers. The gin can rot a man's insides, but it sells faster than bread. The law does not care who drinks it, only who profits. You keep your head down, counting coins with trembling fingers. A sudden shout sends a ripple through the crowd. You flinch, instinct screaming to run, but you force yourself to stay still. The constables are searching for more sellers, their eyes hungry for easy arrests. You edge backward, pressing into the shadow of a doorway. The cold brick at your back is a small comfort. A woman beside you mutters, "They'll break us all, one by one." Her words are a curse and a prophecy. The alley stinks of tar and spilled gin, the ground sticky beneath your feet. You hear the distant rattle of carriage wheels, a reminder that another world moves above yours. You think of the fine ladies who sip imported spirits behind closed doors, safe from raids and shame. Their luxury is built on your risk. The hypocrisy stings more than the cold. You pull your shawl tighter, hiding the stains that mark you as one of the sellers. Tonight's batch was rough, the juniper barely masking the chemical tang. You watched as a man coughed blood into his sleeve, but he paid double for another cup. You tell yourself it is survival, not cruelty. The law calls you a poisoner, but you know hunger is the greater killer. The line between victim and villain blurs with every transaction. You slip away from the crowd, heart pounding. Every shadow feels like a threat. You duck into a narrow passage, the walls damp and close. The sound of boots on stone echoes behind you, too close. You press yourself flat, breath shallow, as two constables pass, their lanterns swinging. Their laughter is sharp, cruel, and you catch a snatch of talk about bribes gone wrong. The price of silence rises with every arrest. You think of the coin in your apron, not nearly enough for protection. The constables want more each week, and sometimes they take what you cannot afford to give. You have seen women dragged from their beds in the dead of night, their children left screaming in the street. You are not sure which is worse, the law or the men who enforce it. The stakes are always shifting. Your hands shake as you count your remaining bottles. The gin is thin, stretched with water, and whatever you can find to give it bite. Some nights you add lime oil, the sharp citrus masking the rot. Other times, a splash of something stronger. Oil of vitriol, they call it, keeps the color clear and the taste sharp. You know it is dangerous, but the buyers do not care. They want oblivion, and you provide it. A breath of cold air cuts through the alley as you slip back toward your tenement. The windows glow with candlelight, shadows moving behind thin curtains. You hear laughter, then a cough that turns to a wet rattle. The sound crawls up your spine. You pass Mary's door. Her mother sits on the step, face buried in her hands. You keep walking, guilt gnawing at your insides. Inside your room, the walls are slick with damp. The air is thick with the smell of gin, sweat, and mold. You pull off your shawl, fingers numb. The coins you earned tonight clink softly on the table. It is not enough. You think of Bess, her eyes empty as she was dragged away. You wonder if you will see her again, or if she will return broken. Another warning to the rest. You sit on the edge of your straw mattress, the rough fabric scratching your legs. You listen for footsteps on the stairs, every creak a threat. Your stomach twists with hunger, but you force yourself to eat slowly. Each bite is a reminder of how close you are to losing everything. The house of correction looms in your mind, a shadow that never lifts. A sudden knock jolts you upright. Your heart stutters, fear flooding your veins. You freeze, listening. The knock comes again, softer this time. You move to the door, every muscle taut. On the other side stands Lizzie, her face pale and eyes wide. She whispers, "They're coming for you." The words hit like a slap. You grab your hidden stash, 3 bottles and a handful of coins. Lizzie urges you to hurry, her hands trembling. You wrap the bottles in rags, tucking them beneath your shawl. The hallway is silent, every door closed. You slip down the stairs, feet barely making a sound. The street outside is empty, mist curling around the lamplight. You move quickly, every sense alert. The city feels alive, watching you. The scent of gin and tar clings to your clothes, marking you as prey. You duck into a side street, heart racing. In the distance, you hear the shouts of constables, the clang of truncheons on doors. London, 1738. And you're hunched in the bowels of a St. Giles cellar, the dirt floor slick beneath your boots, as the distiller's candle flickers across sweating copper and battered brick. The air is thick with the sharp tang of juniper, but layered under it is something more biting, a sour chemical haze that stings the back of your throat. You can taste the danger before you see it. The distiller, A man with hands stained yellow at the fingertips tips a small flask into the pot, the liquid hissing as it hits the gin. He calls it oil of vitriol, and you know better than to breathe too deep. You edge closer, the walls closing in, your skirts brushing against damp stone. The man's voice is low, almost reverent, as he explains how a splash of sulfuric acid sharpens the spirit, preserves it for longer, makes the gin bite harder and sell faster. Each drop is a wager with fate. You watch the fumes curl, the candlelight warping their shape, and you wonder how many souls will drink this batch and never see the morning. The thought is a cold stone in your gut. He adds a twist of lime oil next, swirling it through the cloudy gin. The scent is brighter now, almost fresh, but it can't mask the undertone of rot and metal. You know this trick. Lime oil hides the taste of cheap grain, covers the burn of whatever else is lurking in the mix. The man grins, teeth flashing in the bloom, and says the city's thirst is endless. You nod, but your heart pounds. Every bottle is a secret, and every secret is a risk. You remember the stories, men and women gone blind from a bad batch, their eyes clouded white, their families wailing in the alleys. The gin is cheap, but the price is steep. You've seen the aftermath yourself, bodies slumped in doorways, children crying for mothers who won't wake. The city is littered with warnings, but no one listens. Need drowns out fear. The distiller wipes his brow with a rag, eyes darting to the low window where street noise seeps in. Outside, St. Giles teems with life. Costermongers hawking bruised apples, apprentices chasing each other through puddles, children shrieking as they dart between carts. The world above is chaos, but down here, everything is measured in ounces and heartbeats. You sense the weight of every decision pressing against your ribs. He hands you a bottle, its glass fogged with condensation. The gin inside glows faintly in the candlelight, a promise and a threat in one. You tuck it into your basket, careful not to let it clink against the others. The distiller's warning is simple: don't linger and don't trust anyone with a badge. The constables are hungry for bribes, but hungrier for a public hanging. You nod, the stakes clear. Your freedom is always a hair's breadth from ruin. Your fingers tingle as you step back toward the stairs, the cold from the bottle seeping through your ragged gloves. The air shifts, carrying the distant sound of carriage wheels and the closer cough of someone waiting above. Every sense is sharpened. The cellar's safety is an illusion. One shout, one slip, and you'll be dragged into the street. You breathe shallow, heart racing. You climb, each step creaking under your weight. The scent of gin clings to your skin, mixing with sweat and fear. At the top, a woman waits, her face half shadowed beneath a battered bonnet. She eyes your basket, lips pressed thin. You recognize her from the market, sometimes friend, sometimes rival. Tonight, her motives are unreadable. She leans in, voice a whisper. There's word of a raid, she says, and the watch is closing in on the cellars tonight. The news is a spark in your veins. You glance back at the stairs, pulse pounding, but the distiller has already doused his candle. You're on your own. The woman's eyes flick to the street, then to your basket. She offers a deal, share your haul, and she'll show you a safer route out. The risk is clear, but so is the alternative. You weigh the offer, mind racing. Trust is a rare coin, and betrayal is cheaper than gin. Still, the sound of boots in the alley makes the choice for you. You nod, splitting the bottles between your baskets. The exchange is quick, hands trembling, and you slip out into the fog-drenched night together. The air outside is colder, the streetlights blurred by mist. The woman leads you through a maze of alleys, her pace quick but careful. You pass shuttered gin shops, windows black with soot, and the echo of laughter from a distant tavern. Every shadow feels alive. The city is a living thing, hungry and unpredictable. Your path twists past a row of tenements, where children huddle in doorways, eyes wide and hollow. A smell of tar and unwashed bodies clings to the air, thicker than the fog. You clutch your basket tighter, the bottles inside a burden and a lifeline. The woman glances back, her expression unreadable. A shout rings out behind you, constables, their lanterns swinging, voices sharp with authority. The woman grabs your arm, pulling you into a narrow passage between two crumbling walls. Your breath catches, pressed tight against the bricks. The footsteps grow louder, then fade as the patrol passes. Relief floods your limbs, but it's fleeting. You emerge into a quieter lane, the tension in your shoulders refusing to ease. The woman releases your arm, her eyes searching your face for gratitude or suspicion. You offer neither. The city demands caution, and you've learned not to give trust too freely. Still, you nod in silent thanks. The stakes have shifted again. The woman disappears into the night, leaving you alone with your basket and your thoughts. The street is empty, save for the distant rattle of a cart and the soft drip of water from an overhanging gutter. You move quickly, boots slipping on wet cobblestones. Every step is a calculation. You duck into a shadowed doorway as another patrol passes, their laughter harsh and careless. The gin in your basket feels heavier now, the risk more real. You press yourself against the damp stone, heart thudding in your chest. The city is a labyrinth, and every turn is a new gamble. When the street clears, you slip out and head for the market. The square is deserted at this hour, the stalls empty, but you know a back room where buyers wait. The smell of spilled spirits and old straw greets you as you enter. A man sits at a table, counting coins with stained fingers. He looks up, eyes narrowing. You place a bottle on the table, the glass cold against your palm. The man uncorks it, sniffing the contents with practiced suspicion. He nods, sliding a few coins your way. It's not much, but it's enough to buy bread and maybe a new shawl if you're careful. Survival is measured in pennies, not promises. The man warns you that the watch has doubled their patrols. He says a rival seller was caught last night, dragged through the mud, and hauled off to Newgate. The memory of the seller's fumes lingers in your nose. You thank him and slip out, coins hidden in your glove. The danger is constant, but so is the need. The city swallows you both. Bristol, 1741. You stand in the private room of the Red Lion Coaching Inn, silk shawl slipping over your shoulders, the fabric whispering against your skin. The air is thick with the perfume of juniper and spilled gin, layered over the tang of sweat and candle wax. Laughter erupts from a table of men in powdered wigs, their faces flushed, their hands heavy with jeweled rings. You pour gin into crystal glasses, your fingers steady despite the tightness in your chest. The contrast between their polished world and the grime beneath your fingernails is as sharp as the edge of a broken bottle. You keep your head bowed, eyes darting between the guests and the polished silver tray. The men trade stories about Parliament and trade, their voices rising and falling like the tide. You catch a snatch of talk about new taxes on spirits, and your heart skips. Every word could be a warning or an opportunity, depending on how you play it. The men sip gin that would cost you a week's bread, their laughter hiding sharpness. You breathe in the scent of juniper, trying to steady yourself as you move closer to the hearth. One man, his wig slightly askew, leans toward you. "You girl, more gin." His voice is slurred, but his gaze is sharp. You nod, careful not to meet his eyes, and refill his glass. He smirks, whispering something to the man beside him. You know the look. They see only the servant, not the woman beneath the shawl. The silk feels fragile now, a mask that could slip at any moment. The risk of discovery presses at your ribs, but you keep moving, each step measured. You go, more gin. Night presses close as you stand in the alley behind the coaching inn, the stones slick with London's persistent damp. Sarah, the laundress, leans in, her clever eyes darting from shadow to shadow, voice barely louder than a breath. The air is thick with the tang of gin and the sharper bite of lie. Your nerves roar from a day spent dodging constables and rival sellers. You can smell the sweat on Sarah's collar, the stale perfume of her borrowed scarf. Every sound, a distant cough, the clack of carriage wheels, lands like a warning. Sarah's hand finds yours, rough and warm, a grip urgent. She whispers of a coach leaving at dawn, bound for Bristol, a chance to outrun the city's hunger. You picture the road out, the promise of air that doesn't taste of soot and desperation. Trust is a currency you've spent too freely, but tonight, with your options shrinking, you clutch it like a coin. The stakes are simple: survive or vanish. The two of you crouch beside a stack of empty gin bottles, their glass slick with dew. Sarah's plan is bold: bribe the driver with a bottle or two, slip unnoticed among the passengers, and hope the constables are too busy with the usual rabble to care. You know bribery is the only way half the gin sellers keep their skin intact in this city. The risk is real, but so is the need. You reach into your hidden pocket, fingers brushing the small bottles pressed against your ribs. Each one is a lifeline, the gin sloshing inside like a secret. Sarah unrolls a scrap of cloth, revealing a twist of bread and a stub of cheese, her meager supper. The two of you share it in silence, the food gritty but filling. The taste lingers, a reminder of how little you have left. Sarah's voice drops even lower. She warns you of a rival seller who's been sniffing around the inn, a man with a scar and a habit of turning in women like you for a share of the bounty. You feel your chest tighten, the threat close and real. The gin trade is a game played with knives, and every player is desperate. You press closer to the wall, heart thudding. A sudden shout from the street sends both of you scrambling deeper into the shadows. The alley narrows, the brick walls slick with old rain and spilled spirits. You can smell the tar from the nearby docks, the sickly sweet reek of juniper and rot. Sarah's breath is quick in your ear, her body tense beside you. The sound fades, replaced by the distant toll of a church bell. You edge back toward the inn's rear door, every muscle taut. Sarah signals you to wait. She slips inside, her feet silent on the flagstones, returning moments later with a battered bonnet and a stained shawl. Disguise is your only armor now, the borrowed finery scratching at your skin. You pull the bonnet low, hiding your face from prying eyes. The two of you rehearse your story in whispers, a pair of sisters bound for Bristol to tend a dying aunt. Lies come easy when the truth is a death sentence. Sarah's laughter is soft, almost hopeful. You catch yourself smiling, the first time in days. The moment is fragile, held together by shared fear and the promise of escape. A rat scurries over your foot, breaking the spell. You jerk away, nearly dropping a bottle. Sarah steadies you, her fingers quick and sure. The bottles are hidden in the folds of your skirt, the glass cool against your thigh. You remember stories of women caught with gin sewn into their petticoats, punished for daring to survive. Sarah checks the alley's mouth, eyes narrowed. A constable lingers near the corner, his boots shining in the lamplight. You watch him, pulse racing, as he chats with the innkeeper. The innkeeper's hand slips something small into the constable's palm, a bribe, plain as day. You know the price of silence, and tonight it's not yours to pay. The coach is due at dawn, but the hours crawl. Sarah suggests you rest, taking turns keeping watch. You nestle against a pile of sacks, the burlap rough under your cheek. Sleep is shallow, haunted by dreams of cellars and locked doors. When you wake, Sarah is humming a tune, her eyes bright with purpose. The world feels thinner, stretched between hope and fear. You crave the taste of clean air, the promise of distance. Sarah hands you a flask, the gin inside sharp and biting. You sip, the warmth spreading through your chest, steadying your hands. The city's sounds are muffled here, but every so often you hear the scrape of boots or the low murmur of a passing couple. Danger is never far. Sarah pulls you up, pointing to a scrap of paper tucked behind a loose brick. It's a crude map, marking the coach's route and a safe house in Bristol. The ink is smudged, the lines shaky, but it's a lifeline. You trace the path with your finger, memorizing every turn. The stakes sharpen. If you're caught, there's no mercy. The hours pass in fits and starts. You share stories. Sarah's life in the laundry. Your own days spent hawking gin in back alleys and smoky rooms. She tells you of a friend who was blinded by a batch laced with oil of vitriol, the acid burning through her throat. You shudder. The memory of that smell, acrid, metallic, still fresh in your mind. A carriage rattles past, wheels splashing through a puddle. You duck low, heart hammering. Sarah squeezes your hand, her grip steady. The sound fades, replaced by the distant cry of a street hawker. You both exhale, tension easing for a moment. The night feels endless. Sarah checks the bottles, making sure the corks are tight. You help, fingers numb from cold and fear. The bottles clink softly, a sound that could mean ruin if overheard. You tuck them deeper into your skirts, the weight familiar now. The city's chill seeps through your clothes, but you barely notice. You hear footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing off the wet stone. Sarah pulls you into a doorway, breath held. A figure passes, a woman, her face hidden by a hood. Relief floods you, but the threat lingers. Every stranger is a risk. Sarah whispers that the rival cellar is nearby, asking questions about two women. You stiffen. The dangers suddenly close. She suggests you split up if things go wrong, each taking a different route to the coach. The idea sits heavy in your gut. You nod, knowing it might save you both. You check your disguise in a broken shard of mirror, adjusting the bonnet and shawl. Sarah tucks a wisp of hair behind your ear, her touch gentle. You look like sisters now, battered by the city but unbroken. The moment is brief, but it steels you for what's next. You sit pressed against the cracked leather of the coach, knees knocking with every rut in the road, the first grey light of morning creeping through the filthy window. Sarah is beside you, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her jaw clenched so hard you can almost hear her teeth grind. The city of London shrinks behind you, its fog and stink clinging to your skin, the taste of last night's gin lingering like a dare you didn't quite refuse. Each turn of the wheel carries you further from the only world you've known, but every mile feels like a wager you can't afford to lose. The coach rocks violently as it leaves the city's cobbles, the driver cursing at unseen holes. You clutch your bundle of belongings, feeling the roughness of your only shawl against your palm. The air inside the coach is thick with the scent of old sweat and spilled spirits. Outside, the world is waking up, but you can't shake the feeling of being watched. There is always the chance of a constable's hand reaching through the window, and you flinch at every shout from the roadside. Sarah's gaze is fixed ahead, her eyes rimmed red from a night with little sleep. She has not spoken since you boarded, but the tension in her shoulders tells you she's counting every second. You remember the stories. Women dragged from coaches, accused of selling gin without a license, their names spat like curses. Some never returned from the houses of correction, and those who did came back changed, faces hollowed, voices gone. The fear sits heavy in your chest. You try to steady your breathing, focusing on the rhythm of the wheels and the distant clatter of hooves. The road is lined with blackthorn and bramble, dew sparkling on the thorns. The countryside smells different. Damp earth, wood smoke, a trace of something clean. It's almost enough to make you believe in new beginnings. But the city's shadow stretches long, and you know you carry it with you. A sudden jolt throws you forward, and your knee knocks against the wood. The driver shouts, and the coach lurches to a stop. For one breathless moment, you expect the worst. A constable, a rival seller, someone with a grudge. Instead, a ragged figure appears at the door, thrusting a bundle of bread through the window. The smell of fresh crust is sharp, mingling with the stale gin on your tongue. Sarah fumbles in her pocket and, without a word, slides a small glass vial to the vendor. The exchange is quick, practiced. Even here gin is currency. The coach moves on, the bread warm in your hands. You break off a piece, savoring the chew and the faint taste of salt. Hunger is a constant companion. But for a moment you are distracted by the memory of bakers in St. Giles, their flowery aprons streaked with gin stains. Bread for spirit, spirit for bread. the trade that kept you alive when coins ran out. Each bite is a reminder of bargains made and debts still owed. Sarah glances at you, her lips pressed thin. "We're not safe yet," she whispers, voice barely audible over the rattle. Her words settle over you like a shroud. You know she's right. The road to Bristol is long, and every coaching inn or toll gate could bring trouble. You tuck the last of the bread into your pocket, heart pounding as the coach picks up speed. A sharp cry from outside snaps your attention to the window. Two figures in rough coats are arguing with the driver, their voices muffled but urgent. You recognize the look, men hungry for coin, for information, for anything that might buy them another day's grace. The driver waves them off, but you catch the word gin spat out like an accusation. Your pulse quickens. If someone's tipped them off, you'll have to run before the sun's fully up. The coach lurches forward, leaving the men behind. You sink back, sweat prickling your scalp. The threat is real. One careless word, and you could lose everything. You remember how, in London, a glass of gin could be had for a penny, or 2 pence for a larger measure. It was cheap escape, but the price of being caught was ruin. You can still see the faces of women who vanished after a raid, their fates whispered about in alleyways. Sarah shifts beside you, her hand brushing yours. It's a small gesture, but it grounds you. She leans in, her breath warm against your ear. "If we're stopped, say nothing. Let me talk." You nod, feeling the weight of trust settle between you. In this world, loyalty is as rare as a full meal. You wonder if it will be enough. The coach slows as it nears a toll gate, the driver's voice raised in forced cheer. Through the window, you see a man in a battered hat, his eyes sharp beneath heavy brows. He peers inside, gaze lingering, a little too long on your bundle. You force a smile, willing your hands not to tremble. Sarah produces a coin, her fingers steady, and the man nods, waving you through. Relief floods your body, but it leaves you shaky. You realize every encounter is a test, a chance for someone to see through your disguise, to guess at your real business. The borrowed finery you wear itches against your skin, a constant reminder of the lie you're living. The fabric is finer than anything you owned in St. Giles, but it scratches, and the seams dig into your shoulders. You miss the comfort of old rags, even as you know they marked you as prey. The countryside blurs past, hedgerows and fields giving way to clusters of cottages. You catch glimpses of smoke rising from chimneys, the promise of warmth and safety just out of reach. The coach rattles over a narrow bridge, the river below choked with weeds. For a moment you imagine slipping away, vanishing into the green. But you know, the world beyond the road is as unforgiving as the city you fled. A burst of laughter from the front of the coach startles you. The driver is sharing a joke with a passing farmer, their voices rising in the morning air. The sound is jarring, almost alien after so many weeks of whispered threats and hurried deals. You realize how much you've forgotten about ordinary joy. It stings, and you turn away, watching the world slip by. Sarah shifts, her eyes meeting yours. "We'll need to find work in Bristol," she says, her tone matter of fact. "No more running, if we can help it." You nod, but doubt gnaws at you. You've reinvented yourself before, but each time the cost gets higher. The city ahead is a promise and a threat, and you wonder which will come first. The coach slows again, this time for a herd of sheep blocking the road. The animals mill about, their wool matted and dirty, their bleats echoing off the hedges. The delay grates on your nerves, every minute another chance for fate to catch up. You watch the driver argue with the shepherd, voices rising, the tension thick enough to taste. As the sheep finally move aside, you spot another coaching in the distance. The building is squat and grim, smoke curling from its chimney. The driver announces a short stop. You and Sarah step down, legs stiff, the ground cold and muddy beneath your shoes. The air here is sharper, cleaner, but the scent of spilled gin still lingers, even this far from London. The next hours will test you both. Bristol, 1742. You stand alone on the slick cobbles, dawn's first glow breaking through the river mist, the city's old stone archways yawning before you. The air here is sharper than London's, tinged with salt and coal smoke, but the stench of gin and sweat clings to your skirts. Your boots, still stained from the capital's alleys, scuff the ground as you shoulder your meagre bundle. With each step, you feel the weight of London's shadows recede, but the ache in your bones reminds you that escape is never clean. You press through the narrow street, past a fishmonger's stall, where gutted herring glimmer in wooden crates. The tang of brine and old scales mixes with the ghost of juniper, and your stomach knots. The memory of gin, its sharp, medicinal burn, haunts your tongue. You remember the women you left behind, faces hollowed by cheap spirits and fear, and you wonder if they'll ever taste air this clear. Inside the tavern, the room you rent is cramped but dry, with a low ceiling and a single, soot-streaked window. The mattress sags beneath you, stuffed with straw and old rags. But it feels like luxury after weeks of hiding in London's damp cellars. You run your hands across the rough blanket, savouring the scratch against your skin. The scent of spilled ale and wood smoke drifts up from the tap room below, muffling the sounds of laughter and boots on flagstones. You unpack your bundle, a cracked comb, a faded ribbon, and a small flask, empty now, but once filled with gin so harsh it could strip paint. The stuff you sold in London was often laced with lime oil, or worse, sulfuric acid, to stretch the flavour and keep it from spoiling. You saw what it did to people. Blindness, trembling hands, the sudden collapse of a neighbour in the street. Each time you measured out a dram, you wondered if you'd see her again tomorrow. A knock at the door startles you. You freeze, heart pounding, remembering the constables who raided the alley gin shops. In London, a woman caught selling illegal gin could be sentenced to hard labour, locked away in a house of correction for months or years. You grip the empty flask, ready to swing if needed, but it's only the tavern girl with a crust of bread and a wary glance. You thank her, voice hoarse, and she lingers a moment. Her eyes flick to your bundle, then to the faded bruises on your wrists. She says nothing, but her silence is heavy with understanding. In this city, you realize, every woman carries her own secrets. The bread is stale but filling, and you eat in small bites, savouring each mouthful as if it's a feast. As you chew, the sounds from below grow louder. A burst of laughter, the scrape of a chair, a man's voice rising in song. You close your eyes and let the noise wash over you. For the first time in months, you feel almost safe. But safety is a thin curtain, and you know how quickly it can tear. You lie back, staring at the cracked plaster overhead. The memory of sulfuric gin lingers, a warning and a promise. You think of the women who drank it, desperate for relief from hunger or heartbreak, and the men who profited from their pain. You remember the look in your own mother's eyes, the night she first tasted gin that burned like fire. The risk of blindness was real, but so was the need to forget. A sudden crash from the street below jolts you upright. You rush to the window, heart in your throat, but it's only a cart tipping over, barrels rolling across the cobbles. Relief floods you, but your hands still tremble. Every sound is a threat until proven otherwise. In this new city you must learn the rhythms all over again. You watch as two porters ride the cart, cursing in thick West Country accents. Their coats are patched, faces streaked with grime, but their laughter is easy. You envy them, their simple purpose. In London, every day was a game of survival, each face a potential enemy. Here, you hope for something different, a chance to belong, if only for a while. You force yourself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale. The air smells of wet stone and distant seaweed, a sharp contrast to the fetid tenements you fled. You think of the gin shops, the way the juniper and tar clung to your skin, and you shudder. You vow never to return to that world, no matter how desperate you become. Later, you venture downstairs, careful to keep your head low. The tavern is crowded, filled with sailors and dockworkers, their voices blending into a rough music. You slip onto a bench near the hearth, hands folded in your lap. A serving woman offers you a mug of weak ale, and you accept with a grateful nod. The warmth of the fire seeps into your bones. You listen to the talk around you, stories of ships lost at sea, of fortunes made and squandered in a single night. No one here knows your name or the things you've done. For a moment, you let yourself imagine a future where you are simply another face in the crowd. But the past is never far. A man at the next table leans in, his breath sour with gin, and asks if you're new to Bristol. You hesitate, then lie. Your name is Mary. You're seeking work as a laundress. He grins, missing 2 teeth, and tells you to watch your purse. The city, he says, is full of thieves and worse. You nod, heart steady. You have learned to recognize danger in a glance, to weigh every word for hidden threats. The man loses interest, turning back to his dice. You relax just a little and sip your ale. The taste is thin, but it's honest. You savor the difference. A sudden shout erupts from the far end of the room. 2 men argue over a spilled drink, fists raised, voices echoing off the low beams. The tension crackles, and for a moment you brace for violence. But the innkeeper steps in, voice calm but firm, and the men back down. The moment passes, but your nerves stay taut. You remind yourself, survival means reading a room, knowing when to speak and when to vanish. In London, you learn to move unseen, to slip through crowds like smoke. Here, you must build new habits. Each day is a test, and failure means more than hunger. You finish your ale and return to your room, locking the door behind you. The bed is lumpy, the blanket thin, but you curl beneath it and let exhaustion claim you. Outside, the city quiets, the rattle of carriage wheels fading into the night. You sleep lightly, one ear tuned to every creak and whisper. Morning brings a pale, watery light. You wash your face in a chipped basin, cold water stinging your skin. You study your reflection, hollow-eyed, lips chapped, but alive. You tie your hair back with the faded ribbon, a small act of defiance. Today, you decide, you will find honest work. You step into the street, boots squelching in the mud. The city is waking, vendors setting up stalls, children chasing each other through puddles. You join the flow, blending in with the crowd. The smell of baking bread tempts you, but you keep walking. Every penny must last. You find a laundry near the docks, its sign faded but legible. The woman inside eyes you, then nods toward a pile of linens. You scrub until your knuckles bleed, the scent of lye burning your nose. The work is brutal, but the coin she presses into your palm feels like hope. You return to the tavern as dusk falls, arms aching, clothes damp with steam. The tap room is quieter tonight, the talk subdued. You eat a bowl of stew, savoring the warmth. You listen, always, for the sound of boots on stairs, the warning that someone from London has found you. You remember the stories, how women like you were dragged before magistrates, sentenced to months of hard labor for selling gin without a license. You remember the taste of fear, sharper than any spirit. But here, in this small room above a Bristol tavern, you feel the first stirrings of something like peace.